Why was everyone laughing at her? Why did their voices echo louder than the rifle fire? Crack, crack, crack. The sharp reports of M4s split the morning air at Fort Carson's firing range, and every shot jolted Sarah Mitchell's nerves like a live wire. She pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, clutching her medical bag as if it were armor. The smell of gunpowder clung to the wind. Brass casings danced across the dirt. She wanted to disappear, to shrink until she was just another shadow under the bleachers. Holy hell, look at her. Sergeant Derek Thompson's voice cut through the chaos, rich with mockery. The 6'2" slab of muscle turned from his target, laughter shaking his shoulders. Yo, Doc, this ain't a library. Medics don't fight, remember. The rest of the squad burst into laughter. Even the range instructor tried to hide a smile. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez whistled and added, "Bet she wets herself if someone yells bang." Sarah took another step back until her shoulders pressed hard into the wall. Her eyes, brown with flecks of gold that caught the morning sun, widened with every burst of gunfire. Her fingers brushed the worn dog tags hidden beneath her uniform, and her lips moved without sound. Not again, never again. But the laughter only grew. Thompson spat near her boots. Pathetic. Hayes should ship this coward back to the hospital, leave the real work to soldiers. They didn't notice the way her jaw clenched until her teeth ached. They didn't notice the V-shaped scar that ran along her wrist, half hidden by her sleeve. They didn't hear the small whisper that carried all her years of silence. Not again. In 20 minutes, they would learn why a medic feared the sound of gunfire, and why that fear would save them all. That morning had begun like every other. 5:30 hours. The alarm's shrill tone yanked Sarah from another nightmare. Syria again. Always Syria. Her sheets were damp with sweat, her heart pounding like the thud of rotor blades. She sat on the edge of the bunk, breathing in counts of 4 until the trembling slowed. Then came the ritual. Count to 100. Check every piece of gear. Tourniquets 3. Bandages 6. Morphine syringes 8. Nothing missing, nothing out of place. She opened her locker, hands shaking, and reached for the small brown bottle hidden under her fatigues. Propranolol. The label's edges were worn. She dry-swallowed 2 pills, then hid the bottle again. From beneath her pillow she pulled out a folded photograph. 4 figures in tactical gear, faces blurred. She traced each silhouette with a finger, lips barely moving. "I'm just a medic now," she whispered. "Just a medic." By 600 hours she sat alone in the mess hall's farthest corner, away from the noise, away from the laughter. Forks scraped trays, boots stomped. Someone shouted across the room about deployment schedules. Sarah's fork barely moved. Then came the tray slam. "Scared of breakfast too?" Thompson's voice startled her so violently that her coffee spilled across the table. Rodriguez leaned in behind him, forming a mock pistol with his fingers. Bang. Sarah's body jerked like she'd been hit. Coffee rolled toward the edge of the table. Her hand shook as she tried to wipe it up. Laughter burst across the room. Someone recorded her on a phone. "She's jumpier than a recruit on his first day," Rodriguez said between laughs. From another table, Corporal Lance, the unit's quietest medic, watched her reaction carefully. The tremor wasn't ordinary fear. It was something deeper, like her body was remembering what her mind was trying to bury. Thompson leaned closer, his breath hot against her cheek. 2 weeks, Doc. 2 weeks till we deploy to Iraq. You planning to hide behind your medical bag the whole time? What happens when the bullets are real?" She folded 3 napkins, 1, 2, 3, wiping the coffee in precise lines. Everything had to be exact, controlled. "Answer me when I'm talking to you." "Yes, Sergeant." "Yes, what?" "Yes, Sergeant Thompson." He laughed loud enough for the whole hall to hear. "Everyone, meet our combat medic who's afraid of combat. Maybe we get her a whistle instead of a rifle." More laughter, more phones. Sarah kept her eyes down, counting the scratches in the metal table. 1, 2, 3, 4, each line another heartbeat away from remembering. No one noticed the small exhale that escaped her lips, half a prayer, half a surrender. The range training was mandatory. Every soldier had to qualify with their weapon before deployment, even medics. Sarah tried to go last, hoping the clock would run out, but Thompson made sure she couldn't hide. Ladies first, Doc. He grabbed her arm and dragged her toward the firing line. His grip was hard enough to bruise. Can't have our medic failing her quals. He shoved the M4 into her hands. The smell of gun oil and metal hit her like a punch. For a second, she wasn't on the range anymore. She was back in a bombed-out street, sunlight filtered through smoke, a child standing in the crossfire. Safety still on, genius, Thompson sneered. Her thumb flicked the switch without thought, perfect muscle memory. Then she forced herself to fumble to make it look awkward. Lance noticed. 5 rounds. Make them count, the instructor said. Sarah raised the rifle. Her stance looked wrong on purpose. Feet too close together, shoulders slightly off angle. She fired 5 shots. 2 hit the center, 3 went wide. Lucky shots, Thompson barked. Even a broken clock's right twice a day. But those misses weren't luck. They were discipline. It takes training to miss that cleanly. From the edge of the range, a man in civilian clothes appeared, Lieutenant Colonel Webb, the one with 2 quiet eyes and a Glock on his hip. He watched Sarah over the rim of his sunglasses, expression unreadable. His fingers danced across an encrypted phone. That afternoon, Sarah taught combat lifesaver drills, her comfort zone. Bandages didn't scream. Tourniquets didn't bleed. She wrapped the dummy's arm with practiced focus. What if the medic gets shot first? Thompson interrupted. Laughter rippled through the room. That's why everyone trains, Sarah replied softly. But let's make it realistic, Rodriguez said, pulling out his phone. He played a recording, AK-47 fire, explosions, shouting. The room blurred. The sound wasn't a sound anymore, it was memory. Aleppo, dust in her lungs. A boy stepping from the rubble, something strapped to his chest, her finger tightening on the trigger. The bandage slipped from her hands. It clattered to the floor. She can't even tie a knot, Thompson bellowed. Captain Hayes appeared in the doorway like salvation or judgment. Mitchell, my office, now. Sarah followed, numb. In Hayes's office, the walls were lined with awards and polished certificates. He didn't sit. Your file's unusual, he said, flipping through redacted pages. Medical degree from Johns Hopkins. Enlisted as a private instead of coming in as an officer. Why? Just wanted to serve, sir. I'm considering a non-combat transfer. We deploy in 2 weeks. Enough time to... Yes, sir, she interrupted, relief flooding through her voice. He looked up, unreadable. After deployment, we need numbers now, dismissed. She saluted, throat tight. 2 weeks. She just had to survive 2 weeks. Then disappear again like before. That night in the barracks, she arranged her supplies again and again. Tourniquets, trauma shears, gauze rolls, until every piece was aligned like soldiers in a row. Lance sat on the opposite bunk, watching. Your reaction to gunfire, he said quietly, isn't fear, it's trauma. I'm just not cut out for this, she murmured. He dropped a field manual on her bunk. Advanced marksmanship, sniper tactics and techniques. You might find Chapter 7 useful. She didn't look at it until everyone else was asleep. Chapter 7, shooting under extreme stress. The diagrams, the breathing patterns, the calm before a shot, they were all familiar. Too familiar. She turned the page and whispered to the dark, I'm just a medic now. But the past didn't answer. Days bled into one another, training, mockery, humiliation. During morning PT, someone tripped her. At lunch, food landed in her tray. Target practice, Thompson joked. The laughter followed her everywhere. Each insult was another stone in the wall she built around herself. It was safer that way. Safer to take the pain than to feel it. 7 days before deployment, final drills, simulated convoy ambush, smoke blanks chaos. The fake IED exploded and Sarah froze, completely. She saw not the training field but Aleppo's shattered streets, the blast that had turned everything red. "Move," Thompson shouted, tackling her into cover. She couldn't hear him. Only ringing, only ghosts. The video went viral on base, statue Sarah. Someone spray-painted the latrines. Medics don't fight or move. Rodriguez's prank was the breaking point. He hid a firecracker in her medical bag. When she opened it, the pop was small, but to Sarah it was a bomb. She dropped to her knees, hands over her ears, rocking as the world collapsed into smoke and blood. "Not again," she gasped. The laughter died. Even Thompson froze. Her uniform tore as she curled up, and for the first time they saw the scars, clean, deliberate, surgical. Bullet patterns that told stories of torture, not accidents. Lance knelt beside her. "Those aren't random," he whispered. Then Webb appeared again, silent as a shadow. His phone glowed with a message, "Asset confirmed, Scorpion active." "Maintain cover," the reply read, "He's coming." The next morning the barracks felt colder. Sarah packed her kit with mechanical precision, every roll of gauze, every syringe. She tucked the worn photograph into her vest pocket. When the C-130 roared down the runway at 400, Sarah sat in the back, away from the weapons racks. The air stank of fuel and anticipation. "Doc sits in the safest spot," Thompson said, grinning. He didn't know the rear of the aircraft was the most vulnerable. Halfway across the Atlantic, turbulence hit hard. A young private, Miller, started hyperventilating. Panic rose like a tide, but Sarah moved with impossible calm, pressing fingers to his neck and wrists. His breathing slowed. "How she moved like that?" someone whispered. At a refueling stop in Kuwait, an old supply sergeant paused mid-inventory. "You ever work with the Night Stalkers?" he asked. Sarah forced a smile. "Common face, Sergeant." But his gaze lingered. He'd seen that kind of awareness before, in people who lived too long in the dark. Rumors spread fast. Some said she was a failed Air Force pararescue. Others, a washout from a secret unit. None were close. When Hayes called her in, he held a file with a fabricated history so detailed it almost convinced him. Air Force pararescue, training accident. Makes sense. Sarah lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir." He nodded, satisfied, but Webb knew better. 3 identities burned in 2 years. Someone was hunting her. That night, as the plane carried them toward Iraq, Sarah stared into the darkness and whispered to ghosts that never answered. She didn't know it yet, but the next dawn would demand the choice she'd been running from. Not between medicine and war. Between who she pretended to be and who she really was. Why did the city look so quiet? Baghdad stretched ahead like a ghost, heat shimmering off the ruined roadways, the kind of silence soldiers learned to fear. The convoy of MRAPs rolled out under the burning Iraqi sun, tires grinding dust into memory. Sarah sat in the back of the last vehicle, medical bag between her boots, breathing slow and steady. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. It had once been a coping technique from therapy. Now it was preparation for something she refused to name. Outside, life had retreated. Market stalls abandoned, windows shuttered, dogs prowling empty streets. Locals knew when death was coming. "Tail end Charlie," Thompson's voice crackled over the radio from the lead vehicle. "Safest seat in the convoy. You good back there, Doc?" Sarah stared out the armored slit of the window. The buildings ahead funneled the street into a narrow throat, a kill zone. "I'm fine," she said softly, but her eyes kept scanning. Crater there, burned out sedan there. Nothing random about their placement. Martinez, the driver, caught her expression. Something wrong. Her gaze lingered on a white plastic bag half buried in dust. How long that been there? Probably weeks. Why? Because the wind never moved it. because the sand around it was too smooth, because every instinct in her body screamed ambush. "Stop the convoy," she said. "What?" "Stop the convoy now." Before the radio could relay her words, Thompson's voice thundered across the net. "Who the hell said that?" "Your scared medic," Martinez answered. "She thinks." "Shut her up," Thompson snapped. "We're not halting in the middle of—" The explosion cut him off. The shockwave slammed through the convoy. The lead MRAP flipped onto its side, armor shrieking as it ground into concrete. Shouts, static, chaos. "Contact, contact, front." The world dissolved into dust and fire. RPG trails streaked across rooftops. Machine gun fire poured down from every direction. Sarah's ears rang. Her pulse hammered. For one frozen instant she was back in Aleppo, same sound, same smell, same panic. Then another voice broke through the comms, deep and calm, accented English. "Hello, Phantom." Her blood turned to ice. 2 years since she'd heard that voice. 2 years since Syria. 2 years since you let my son die. Every radio in the convoy went silent. Even the gunfire seemed to hesitate. "Who is Phantom?" Thompson gasped from somewhere up front, bleeding, confused. Sarah's throat closed. She didn't answer. Her hands trembled, but not from fear this time, from recognition, from the weight of ghosts crawling out of the dark. Machine guns resumed their deadly chorus. Bullets slammed into the MRAP's hull, hammering the metal like fists demanding entry. Martinez yelled, "We're surrounded, left and right." Sarah reached for her medical bag, then froze. To help them, she'd have to open the rear hatch, expose herself to the snipers. And Scorpion, the man on the radio, her old partner, would be waiting for exactly that. "Phantom must choose," his voice purred through static. "Healer or killer, show them who you really are." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I'm just a medic now." Lance's voice cut through the panic, ragged and desperate. "Sarah, we've got wounded. We need you." Miller's scream followed. A boy's scream, 19 years old, torn open by shrapnel. The smell of blood filled the vehicle. Metallic, hot, human. Sarah's fingers brushed the zipper of her bag. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She looked at the rifle racked beside her. The weight of it felt alive. Outside, Rodriguez shouted over the comms, voice cracking. "They're hitting us from rooftops. I can't see them." "Copy," Thompson wheezed through pain. "Return fire, everyone." A single sniper shot silenced him. Sarah's head snapped toward the sound. The bullet had come from the east, high angle, roughly 380 meters. Classic counter-ambush position. Her mind began calculating before she could stop it. Distance, wind, line of sight, cover options. She wasn't supposed to know these things anymore. But Scorpion's voice came again. "Still pretending, Phantom, still lying to yourself." Her hands steadied. Her breathing changed. She opened her eyes and they weren't trembling anymore. Martinez looked at her in disbelief. "Doc, what are you doing?" Sarah didn't answer. She reached for the rifle. The metal felt like shaking hands with an old friend she'd sworn never to see again. "Sarah, wait." Lance grabbed her arm. "You don't have to." "I do." She loaded the magazine, checked the chamber, adjusted the scope. Her motions were fluid, economical, too smooth for a medic. "Through the scope," she whispered, "the world gets smaller." She found the glint of sunlight on a fourth-floor window. Breath in, hold, squeeze. Crack! The sniper's rifle tumbled from his hands before his body followed. For a heartbeat, the battlefield went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Rodriguez's voice broke the spell. "Holy, Doc just took him out." But Sarah didn't hear them. Her body moved on its own, slipping from the MRAP, boots crunching into broken glass and sand. Gunfire resumed instantly. She moved like smoke, low, precise, each motion born from long-buried instinct. Rodriguez, left flank. Lance spoke now. Her voice carried command authority none of them had heard before. They obeyed without question. Sarah fired again, and again, each shot surgical, each enemy silhouette collapsing before it finished turning. 12 hostiles down in 45 seconds. The gunfire faded to echoes. When it was done, she stood in the middle of the street, rifle lowered, chest heaving. The silence afterward felt heavier than the battle. Then she dropped the rifle. It hit the ground with a dull metallic thud. She was running before it stopped rolling, kneeling beside Thompson's mangled body. Blood soaked through his uniform, bright against the dust. "Stay with me, Derek," her voice cracked. "Come on, stubborn bastard, breathe." He coughed, crimson bubbling at his lips. "Doc, you shot like a ghost." "Shut up," she said, pressing hard on the wound. "You'll live." Her hands were covered in blood again, but this time it wasn't from taking life. It was from trying to save it. Around her, the remaining soldiers watched in stunned silence. The medic they'd mocked had just turned the tide of an ambush that should have wiped them out. Then Webb's voice came through the command channel, low and urgent. "Authentication. Ghost. 7-7. Confirm." Lance looked at Sarah. "What the hell does that mean?" Webb's voice continued, calm, efficient, deadly. "Phantom 27, CIA Special Activities Division. 47 confirmed kills. Syria, Yemen, Libya." Murmurs rippled through the surviving soldiers. Thompson's eyes widened, pain and disbelief mixing into something close to awe. "You're the Aleppo ghost," he whispered. "You're the one who—" Sarah didn't let him finish. Her focus was on the artery under her hands, the pulse slowing with every beat. "Don't talk, just breathe." Miller groaned behind her. "Doc, I can't." She was already there, switching from patient to patient with seamless precision. Needle decompression, morphine, tourniquet, airway, each motion clinical, calm, automatic. Her rifle lay forgotten in the dirt. Webb's voice crackled again. "Medevac inbound, 5 minutes. Sarah, orders from Langley, you're recalled. Scorpion knows you're here." "I'm not leaving," she said without looking up. "Not until they're stable." "That's not a request," Webb barked. "Or should I say Agent Chen?" Her hands froze for the briefest second. Chen, her real name, the one she'd buried 2 years ago. "I'm not her anymore," she whispered. "I'm a medic." Thompson tried to lift his head. "You saved me," he rasped. "After everything I did to you, why?" She looked him in the eye, tears streaking dirt across her face. "Because that's what medics do. We save everyone, even the ones who hurt us." The rhythmic thump of helicopters grew louder, Black Hawks descending like dark wings over the wreckage. Dust whipped through the air. Unmarked operators poured out, weapons raised. Webb stepped among them, headset pressed to his ear, eyes locked on her. "Agent Mitchell," he called over the rotor wash. "Time to go." Sarah didn't even glance up. She was inserting a chest tube into Miller's side, her movements sure and efficient. 5 more minutes. "Now," Webb said firmly. Thompson's voice, weak but clear, cut through the chaos. "Nobody touches our dock." The soldiers around him shifted, wounded but ready. Weapons lifted, not at the enemy but at Webb's men. Rodriguez added, "She stays until she's done." Webb hesitated, calculating. He could order them to take her by force, but even he knew how that would end. Then his phone buzzed. He read the message and the color drained from his face. He looked at Sarah, voice suddenly strained. "Scorpion just hit your sister's school in Virginia. They stopped him, but he left a message. He has all their names, everyone in your unit, their families, unless you come alone." For the first time since the ambush began, Sarah's hands went still. Her sister, 16, innocent. "I'll go," she said quietly. "Like hell," Thompson growled. "We don't negotiate with—" "You don't understand," she interrupted, eyes haunted. "He's not after you, he's after me." Lance shook his head. "You saved us, Sarah, whatever debt you think you owe." "I owe everyone," she said softly. "Every life I take adds a weight, Every life I save just balances it for a moment. The medevac birds touched down, kicking up a storm of dust and debris. Sarah guided stretchers aboard, giving handoffs to the medical crew, tourniquets here, morphine dosages there, chest seals intact. Her voice never shook once. When Thompson was lifted into the helicopter, he caught her hand again. "I was wrong about you," he whispered. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." She smiled faintly, but her eyes were hollow. "No, Sergeant, I'm just a medic." The helicopter lifted, rotor blades thundering overhead. Sarah watched it disappear into the blazing sky, her reflection in its glass shrinking to nothing. Behind her, Webb stood silently, phone still in hand, waiting for her decision. She didn't look back. She just picked up her rifle, slung it over her shoulder, and started walking toward the horizon where the smoke still rose. Each step echoed the same thought. This ends with me. Why did silence always come after victory? The road back to FOB Prosperity stretched under a punishing Iraqi sun, every mile a funeral march. The convoy's engines rumbled like distant thunder, steady, mechanical, heartless. Inside the MRAP, Sarah sat with her rifle across her knees and her medical bag at her feet, staring at her blood-stained gloves. The crimson had dried to a brown crust, cracking as she flexed her fingers. Each flake that fell away felt like another name on her mental ledger, another life that refused to let go. No one spoke. The soldiers who remained alive stole glances at her, some fearful, some reverent, none understanding. An hour ago, she had been their weakest link. Now she was something else entirely, something they didn't have a word for. "She's not human," one of the privates whispered, too quiet to think she'd hear. He was wrong, she was human. That was the problem. Outside the window, the city blurred into beige. Sarah's reflection stared back, eyes too calm, too focused, the calm of someone who'd crossed a line and could never uncross it. She'd saved them, but to do it, she'd become what she'd sworn she'd never be again. At the base, they were met by stares. Word had spread faster than the medevac helicopters. The footage from helmet cams had already been uploaded to internal servers, passed from soldier to soldier like a campfire story. The medic who became a sniper, the ghost who walked through fire. As the convoy rolled past the gate, soldiers stopped what they were doing to watch. Some saluted, others simply stared. Sarah ignored them all. The aid station smelled of antiseptic and burnt metal. It was home, in a strange, temporary way. She pulled off her gloves and washed her hands until the water ran clear, but no matter how much she scrubbed, the stain stayed. That was when Webb entered. No uniform this time, just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled up, that same Glock on his hip. His shadow filled the doorway before he did. "Agent Mitchell," he began. "Specialist Mitchell," she corrected without turning. He ignored that. "You saved them. That ambush should have wiped out the convoy." Her jaw tightened. "Don't thank me, you knew he was coming." Webb sighed. "Scorpion, been active for months. He's been hunting you. We had to confirm he'd take the bait." Her head snapped around, eyes flashing. "You used my unit as bait." "They're soldiers, they knew the risks." "No," she said coldly. "They didn't, you knew. And you let them walk into an ambush so you could track him." He didn't deny it. "You killed 12 hostiles in under a minute. That's more than any field medic's ever done. You think anyone still believes your cover?" She turned away, shoulders rigid. "I didn't do it for them. I did it because they were dying." Webb stepped closer, lowering his voice. "He's not done, Sarah. The hit on your sister's school, it wasn't random. He left a list. Every soldier from your convoy, their families. He's forcing your hand." She dried her hands, the motion deliberate, controlled. "Then I'll give him what he wants." Webb studied her face. "Langley wants him alive. You're the only one who can draw him out." She laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You think I care what Langley wants?" He looked at her for a long moment. "You used to." That night, the base felt different. Soldiers she'd never spoken to approached her in the corridors, their eyes full of something between respect and fear. "Doc," Rodriguez called, limping up to her, his arm in a sling. "They say you were Special Activities Division. That true?" Sarah kept walking. "Don't believe everything you hear." He grinned faintly. "Doesn't matter what you were, you saved us. You're one of us." That made her stop. For a long time she said nothing. Then softly, "No, Rodriguez, I'm what comes after you run out of us." He frowned, not understanding, and she walked away before he could ask more. Inside her quarters she found her locker open. Her old uniform lay folded on the bunk, freshly cleaned, newly pressed. No medic insignia this time. On top of it, a small black case. She knew what was inside before she opened it. Her rifle maintained, oiled perfect. And beneath it, an envelope with her real name. Chen Sarah L. Phantom 27. The letters blurred for a moment before she blinked them back into focus. When Webb entered a few minutes later, she didn't turn. "You shouldn't have brought this." He leaned against the frame. "You'll need it, Babylon, he wants you there." Her shoulders stiffened. "The ruins." He nodded. "Where you first worked together, he's recreating the beginning. The pattern matches his psych profile. He wants it to end where it started." She closed the case and snapped the latch shut. "Then that's where it ends." "Sarah, listen to me." Webb's tone softened, almost paternal. "You're not stable enough." She spun on him, fury flashing through the mask. "Don't talk to me about stable. You sat behind a desk while I watched children die. You think I don't know what unstable looks like?" He didn't respond. He just handed her a tablet. The screen showed surveillance footage from the ambush site, her moving through chaos, calm, efficient, lethal. "This is who you are," he said quietly. She stared at the image. "No, that's who you made me." He sighed, pocketing the tablet. "You have a flight at dawn. Your kit will be waiting." When he left, she sat on her bunk, the weight of the rifle across her knees. The silence in the room was deafening. Lance knocked softly on the door. "Can I come in?" She didn't answer, but he stepped inside anyway. He looked exhausted, bandages on his forearm, dirt still on his boots. "They're saying you're leaving. Is it true?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Where?" "Somewhere I should have gone years ago." He hesitated. "I read your file, the real one, or part of it, Aleppo." Her eyes flicked to him, sharp. "You had no clearance." He shrugged. "You saved my life. I figured that earned me some." Silence stretched between them. Finally, he said, "You're not the monster you think you are." Sarah almost smiled. "Aren't I? 12 dead in under a minute, you saw it." "I saw someone saving her team." She looked away. "That's what we all tell ourselves at first." He took a step closer. "You don't have to go alone." "I do." "Why?" "Because he'll make sure everyone near me dies." He wanted to argue but saw in her eyes that it wasn't a metaphor. He nodded slowly. "You'll come back, right?" Sarah didn't answer. She packed her bag instead, medical kit first, ammunition last. 2 identities, 2 lives she could never balance. When Lance finally turned to go, she said softly, "Take care of them for me. Thompson's shoulder, Miller's lungs, Rodriguez's head injury. They'll need time." He stopped at the door. "And what about you?" She paused, the faintest of smiles tugging her lips. "I stopped counting time a long time ago." That night she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the floodlights sweep across the base, each pass cutting the darkness into ribbons. Somewhere beyond those walls, Scorpion was waiting. She opened her locker again and took out the photograph she'd carried since the beginning. 4 figures, tactical gear, faces blurred. One of them had been him. She traced his outline with her finger. "Why, John?" she whispered. No answer came, only the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant thunder of artillery. At dawn, the sky was the color of rust. The air tasted of dust and aviation fuel. Sarah walked across the tarmac, her steps measured, deliberate. The helicopter waited, matte black, rotors idling like a heartbeat. Webb stood beside it, helmet under his arm. "You don't have to do this." She adjusted her rifle strap. "You of all people should know, I don't do what I have to, I do what no one else will." He gave a humorless smile, "Just like Aleppo." She stopped, eyes narrowing. "Don't say that name. It's the only one that matters." She climbed aboard. The door shut behind her with a metallic thud. As the helicopter lifted off, the base fell away beneath her, tiny figures, rows of tents, the glint of sunlight on steel. Her hand found the photo again. She folded it once, then slid it into her vest pocket over her heart. She didn't look back. The pilot's voice came over the comm. "ETA to Babylon, 40 minutes." She nodded silently, eyes on the horizon. 40 minutes until she faced the ghost she'd made. 40 minutes until everything ended, one way or another. And for the first time in 2 years, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. What does it feel like to walk toward your own reckoning? For Sarah, it felt like calm. Not peace, just the hollow kind of stillness that comes when fear burns itself out. The helicopter blades pounded above her, chopping the air into chaos. She watched the landscape below stretch into a desert of bones, beige earth and scattered ruins that looked as old as guilt itself. Babylon, the cradle of civilization and the grave of too many sins. Webb's voice came through the headset. "We'll set down 1 click out. Overwatch in position in 20. "No drones," Sarah said quietly. Static crackled. "Say again." "No drones, no Overwatch. This is between him and me." "Not the plan." "It is now." Silence. She could almost hear him deciding whether to argue, but they both knew she wasn't asking. When the helicopter touched down, the air was hot and heavy, thick with dust that clung to her skin. She stepped out into the wind of the rotors, hair whipping against her face, and for a moment she just stood there, staring at the ruins in the distance. Ancient stones etched with time, rising from the earth like old regrets refusing to be buried. She adjusted the strap of her rifle across her shoulder, but beneath the tactical gear, the medic's insignia was still sewn into her sleeve. She refused to remove it. She was both now healer and killer, and she didn't know which one would walk out of those ruins alive. Webb caught her arm before she turned away. "Sarah," he said, voice low, "you know what he's capable of." "So do I. Langley wants him alive." She looked him in the eye. "Langley lost the right to want anything 2 years ago." Then she walked away. The ruins of Babylon loomed larger with every step. Crumbled walls, half-buried statues, the whisper of wind through stone corridors. She moved like she'd been there yesterday, because part of her never left. The same stones had once echoed with her and Scorpion's laughter, their whispered arguments during missions, the easy trust that came before betrayal. Now the air felt colder. She passed a broken archway, her boots kicking up dust. Every sound made her pulse quicken. She could feel him here, not just sense him, but feel him, the way she always had. Their bond had been built on survival, on knowing what the other would do before they did it. A voice drifted across the ruins, soft but sharp as glass. "Hello, Phantom." She stopped dead. It came from everywhere and nowhere, carried by the wind. "I've waited a long time for this." Her hand went to her rifle. "John." A pause, then a laugh, low, bitter, wounded. "You still call me that, like it means something." "It does. It used to." Silence. A bird took off from the ruins, startled by something unseen. Sarah scanned the ridgelines. Every shadow looked like a sniper's nest, every glint like a scope. Then he spoke again. "Do you know what the hardest part was? It wasn't killing my son." Her heart stopped. "It was watching you make me do it." Her breath hitched. A muzzle flash split the darkness. The bullet hit the stone inches from her head, showering her with dust. He could have killed her, he didn't. He wanted her to feel it, to remember. She ducked behind a fallen column, pulse hammering. They were children, she shouted back. Armed or not, they were still children. His voice was closer now, echoing between the walls. No, they were weapons. My son was already dead the moment they strapped that vest on him, but you had to make it harder. You had to make me watch. Another shot, closer. She could feel the concussion against her chest. He was moving, flanking, repositioning, just like old times. She mirrored him instinctively, circling the opposite direction. It felt like dancing with a memory. Then he spoke again, voice filled with venom and grief. Tell me, do your new friends know the truth? Do they know what Aleppo was really about? Sarah froze. Operation Red Sand, he continued. That wasn't about terrorists. It was about eliminating a peace negotiator, someone trying to end a war that was too profitable to stop. Her stomach turned to ice. Shut up, she whispered. Oh, but I think I'll keep talking, because you've been lying to yourself for 2 years, pretending you're a medic now, pretending you can wash blood off your hands with gauze and morphine. She swallowed hard. You don't know what I've done. I know exactly what you've done, he said. You saved soldiers who mocked you. You saved enemies who shot at you. You keep trying to save the world, Phantom, but the world doesn't want saving. It just wants more ghosts like us. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. Then she whispered, I didn't know about the negotiator. Yes, you did, he said softly. You just didn't want to. Her rifle came up slowly, eyes searching the ruins. She caught movement, a flicker of shadow, then nothing. She crouched lower, pressing her cheek against the stock. Her mind calculated angles, distances, crosswinds, just like training. The muscle memory returned with painful precision. When she finally saw him, he looked like a ghost, the same lean frame, the same way he held his rifle like an extension of himself. But his face was older now, carved by grief. Her breath caught. Do it, he called, stepping into the open. Take the shot, end it. Her finger tightened on the trigger. He spread his arms. Come on, Phantom, you never miss. Let's see if the medic can still kill. She sighted down the barrel, his chest, his throat, his heart. Her breath came steady, perfect, but her finger froze. I can't, she said, voice breaking. His smile was sad. That's what I thought. The rifle lowered. Because you're still human, he said quietly, and that's why you'll never be free. Then he raised his weapon and fired. The impact hit like a hammer. Pain bloomed across her chest. She fell back, gasping for air. But as her fingers found the spot, she felt ceramic under her fingertips, plate armor. The round hadn't penetrated. He'd aimed for the gap and missed, on purpose. Through the haze of pain, she saw him standing there, weapon lowered, face unreadable. Now we're even, he said softly. You made me kill my son, I made you break your oath. It's not even, she rasped. No, he admitted, it never will be. He reached into his vest and pulled out something small, a detonator. Her eyes widened. John, don't. You think I came here to talk. The ruins are wired, enough C4 to make sure neither of us leaves. Why, she pleaded, why now? He smiled, weary and broken. Because this is all that's left for people like us, to erase the proof we ever existed. She took a step forward. You don't have to do this. Don't I? What else is there? Go back to killing for lies. Watch more children die for someone's paycheck. At least this way I get to choose how it ends. His thumb rested on the trigger. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. There's another way. He laughed, always the optimist, still trying to save everyone. Not everyone, she said, just you. The word stopped him. She lowered her rifle, letting it hang loose by the strap. You and I, we've both been used, programmed to follow orders to kill who they told us to. We believed it meant something, but it didn't. They made us into weapons and then threw us away. You think I don't know that, he said, but the edge was gone from his voice. Then stop letting them win. He hesitated, the detonator trembling slightly in his hand. Disappear with me, she said. No more CIA, no more missions, no more ghosts, just gone. He stared at her across the ruins, his face unreadable. You tried that, he said finally. I found you. Because you were looking, stop looking. A long silence stretched between them. Two soldiers in the ruins of one of humanity's oldest cities, standing among broken stones and older sins. Finally, Scorpion lowered his hand. The detonator slipped from his fingers, falling into the dust. Sarah exhaled, the first real breath she'd taken in years. He smiled faintly, the lines of his face softening. You always were too soft, Phantom. And you always mistook compassion for weakness. For a second, they almost smiled at each other, the ghost of what they once were flickering to life. Your sister's safe, he said after a long pause. She always was, I just needed you to come. Sarah nodded slowly, I know. They stood in silence as the wind swept through the ruins, carrying away the dust, the echoes, maybe even some of the pain. Then Webb's voice crackled faintly in Sarah's earpiece. Phantom, report, we heard a shot. She pulled the earpiece out and let it fall. Let them wonder. John raised an eyebrow. You know they'll come for us. Let them, she said. We'll already be gone. They turned away from the detonator, from the weapons, from the ghosts of Aleppo and Babylon alike. Two soldiers walking out of history, leaving behind the war that had defined them. The world would keep fighting. It always did. But for the first time, neither of them would. And as the sun broke over the horizon, Sarah whispered the words that had haunted her since Fort Carson. Medics don't fight. John finished it softly, a weary smile ghosting across his face. Unless they have to. How do you bury two ghosts that never died? Webb stared at the satellite feed flickering on his tablet, Babylon reduced to smoke and static. The explosion had flattened half the ruin, sent shockwaves through the desert for miles. No bodies recovered, no heat signatures left behind, just silence. He stood in the operations tent, surrounded by officers who avoided his eyes. Everyone wanted answers. None of them wanted the truth. A major spoke first, so she's gone. Webb didn't answer right away. He replayed the last transmission one more time, Sarah's voice, soft but certain, let them wonder. He closed the tablet. Yes, both of them. The major frowned. You're sure? Webb's tone was even, positive. Outside, the dawn over Iraq was bruised and silent. Soldiers moved through their routines like machines, refueling trucks, checking weapons, counting ammo. The war went on, indifferent to the names it erased. But Webb couldn't shake the hollow feeling clawing at his gut. He'd spent half his career turning people into assets and the other half pretending not to remember their faces. Sarah Mitchell, Agent Chen, was the only one who had ever made him feel the weight of it. He poured himself a cup of coffee gone cold hours ago. File it as a mutual kill, he said. Two ghosts erased, no further investigation. The major nodded, relief flickering across his face. One less complication. But Webb knew better. You don't erase people like Sarah and Scorpion. You just lose track of them for a while. Fort Carson, Colorado. 2 months later. The ceremony was small. Too small for what they'd done, or what everyone thought they'd done. A row of chairs on the parade ground, flags half-mast, uniforms pressed, medals polished. The sky was a perfect, heartless blue. Sergeant Lance stood among the wounded survivors of the ambush, a sling still around his arm. Thompson sat in a wheelchair beside him, bandaged and pale, his medals gleaming like lies. A general took the podium, voice crisp and detached. Today, we honor the courage of Specialist Sarah Mitchell, United States Army medic, for her extraordinary heroism in the face of enemy fire. Her actions saved the lives of her unit, and her sacrifice ensured their survival. Applause followed, polite, hollow, orchestrated. Lance swallowed hard. He hated these ceremonies. The flags, the speeches, the way they turned loss into theater. Thompson leaned toward him. "You think she's really gone?" Lance's jaw tightened. "No." "Then where is she?" Lance didn't answer. He just watched the folded flag being handed to an empty chair. The general stepped aside for a woman in civilian clothes, Sarah's sister. She accepted the flag with shaking hands, her eyes red but dry. She'd been told her sister died a hero. She didn't believe it, not entirely. Somewhere deep down, she still expected the phone to ring. After the ceremony, the crowd dispersed slowly. Reporters took photos, soldiers exchanged handshakes and murmured condolences. Webb stood at the edge of the field, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Lance approached him, voice low. "You did this, didn't you? You used her." Webb didn't deny it. She knew the risks. "She trusted you. That's what made her valuable." Lance's fists clenched. "You people don't stop, do you? You build monsters and then pretend they were never human." Webb's gaze flicked to the folded flag in the distance. "We didn't build her. We just gave her a reason." Lance stared at him for a long moment. "You'll never find her." Webb's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. "Who says I'm looking?" Half a world away, the wind smelled of salt and rain. Somalia's coastline shimmered under the late afternoon sun. Small fishing boats dotted the horizon, their sails torn and faded. Children ran barefoot through the sand, chasing each other with the wild laughter of those who didn't know the world had forgotten them. A small medical tent stood at the edge of a refugee camp, its canvas patched, its supplies sparse. Inside, Sarah Mitchell tied off a bandage around a boy's arm and smiled softly. "Better?" she asked. The boy nodded shyly. "Better." She patted his head. "No more climbing the fences, okay?" He grinned and ran off, disappearing into the sunlight. Sarah sat back on her heels, exhaling slowly. Her hair was shorter now, sun-bleached at the edges. The tan on her skin told stories no uniform ever could. Her hands, steady, precise, moved to prepare the next syringe. Outside, a shadow passed across the tent flap. "Got any antibiotics left?" She didn't look up. "Second shelf, left box." The voice that answered made her pause. "You always were good at inventory." She turned slowly. John stood there, scorpion leaner now, beard trimmed, dressed in simple field clothes. No weapons, just a weary calm in his eyes. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then she said, "You're supposed to be dead." He shrugged. "So are you." A small smile ghosted across her lips. "Guess we're bad at following orders." He chuckled softly. "Seems that way." She handed him a roll of gauze. "You still limping?" "Old wound, nothing new." He sat down on an empty crate, watching her work. "They think we're ashes in Babylon." She nodded. "Let them." He studied her face. "You ever think about going back?" "Back where? To being their weapon, their lie?" "No," he said. "Home." She hesitated. "I tried that once, didn't fit anymore." Silence stretched between them, heavy but not hostile. Outside, the ocean murmured like an old friend. Finally he asked, "Why Somalia?" She gave a faint smile. "Because no one looks for ghosts here." He looked around the tent, worn, humble, alive. "And what are you now?" She thought for a moment. "A medic, for real this time." He nodded slowly, then pulled something from his pocket, a folded photograph. The one she'd thought was lost in Babylon. 4 figures, tactical gear, one of them laughing. He handed it to her. "Thought you'd want this back." She stared at it, her throat tightening. "You kept it." He smiled faintly. "It's the only proof I ever had that we were human once." She folded it carefully and slipped it into her vest pocket, same place as always, over her heart. Outside, the wind carried the sound of laughter again, children playing near the shoreline, the faint hum of life rebuilding itself. John watched them for a while. You really think this makes up for it, all the things we did? She didn't look up. No, but it's a start. He nodded, accepting the answer. Then, after a moment, he said, they'll find us eventually. Sarah tightened a bandage, her voice calm. Then we'll move again. Together. She looked at him. You planning to disappear too? He shrugged. Maybe I already have. Their eyes met, and for the first time since Aleppo, neither of them looked away. For a long moment the past fell silent. No gunfire, no orders, just the sound of waves breaking on the shore. 3 days later, Webb received an unmarked envelope in his secure inbox. No return address, no metadata. Inside was a single photo. A Somali child with a fresh bandage on his arm. In the background, 2 figures half out of focus. A woman tying her hair back, a man watching the sea. No names, no location, just a note scrawled in pencil. Sometimes, healing is the only way to fight. Webb stared at the photo for a long time before sliding it into a drawer and locking it. Then he turned off the light and sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the air vents. He wasn't sure if it was guilt or relief he felt, maybe both. The war would continue, the programs would go on, new names would fill old files, but for once 2 of his ghosts had chosen their own ending. In Somalia, the sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. Sarah stood on the beach, sleeves rolled up, watching the children she'd patched up earlier chase waves. Their laughter mingled with the crash of surf, a sound that almost felt like forgiveness. John joined her, his boots sinking into the sand beside hers. You think they'll remember us? He asked. She smiled faintly. They'll remember being saved, that's enough. He nodded, gazing at the endless water. You ever miss it, the noise, the adrenaline? Every day, she said quietly, but I miss silence more. They stood there until the sun disappeared completely. 2 silhouettes against the fading light, unarmed, unnamed, unseen. Somewhere far away, metals would tarnish, files would gather dust, wars would keep repeating themselves. But here, on this quiet stretch of forgotten shore, the ghosts had finally stopped fighting. Sarah turned to him, her voice barely above the whisper of waves. Sometimes, she said, dignity doesn't speak. He looked at her, eyes soft. No, he said, it simply acts. How long can ghosts hide before the world comes knocking again? For Sarah, it had been 112 days. She'd counted, not because she wanted to, but because every day without gunfire felt like something fragile that might break if she didn't acknowledge it. Somalia had become her kind of silence. The mornings began with the smell of sea salt and diesel, and the nights ended with wind moving through torn tarps and the murmur of prayer from distant huts. For the first time in years, she was no one. Just a woman in a field clinic who patched up fishermen and shepherds, who boiled water before every surgery, who still flinched when helicopters passed overhead. That morning she was stitching a girl's palm, small, careful loops of thread, sun filtering through the canvas, when John's voice came from the tent flap. Supply boat's late again, he said. She didn't look up. Everything's late here. Yeah, well, this one's really late. There was something in his tone, a caution she recognized, the kind that came from old instincts reawakening. She tied off the final knot, snipped the thread, and looked up. You saw something. He hesitated, maybe. She wiped her hands and followed him outside. The air shimmered with heat. Out beyond the shallows, a small motorboat rocked unevenly on the tide. It wasn't one of the village boats. No nets, no markings, just 2 men in tattered clothes, too clean, too still. John watched through a pair of borrowed binoculars. No fishing gear, no cargo. Armed. He passed her the lenses. One's hiding something under his jacket, could be a sidearm. She tracked the boat's slow approach. It wasn't coming toward the pier. It was coming straight for the clinic beach. Her pulse quickened. Locals say pirates use this stretch. He nodded. Sometimes, or smugglers, but smugglers don't come in daylight. The boat drifted closer, motor sputtering. The smaller of the two men was slumped forward, unmoving. Sarah's medic instincts kicked in first. Someone's hurt. John caught her arm, or playing hurt. She met his eyes. If he's bleeding, I can't stand here and watch him die. He sighed, the kind of sigh that carried both resignation and admiration. You haven't changed. Neither have you, she said softly and walked toward the shore. He followed, scanning the horizon. The sea was calm, too calm. When the boat touched sand, Sarah climbed aboard. The injured man lay sprawled against the hull, shirt soaked in blood. A knife wound deep, ugly, near the ribs. His eyes fluttered open. Help, he rasped. She tore open her pack, pressing gauze against the wound. Stay still. What happened? He shook his head weakly. Please, they'll come. Who? Before he could answer, the other man, the one who'd been steering, pulled something from his pocket and threw it at her feet. It was a patch. Black fabric, a scorpion embroidered in red thread. Her heart stopped. She looked up sharply, but the man was gone, diving over the side, vanishing into the waves. John was already running toward her, rifle in hand. What the hell is that? She picked up the patch, her fingers trembling. It's his mark, scorpion. John froze. He's dead, Sarah. Then someone's wearing his ghost. The wounded man groaned. She turned back to him, voice sharp. Where did you get this? His lips moved soundlessly, then one word slipped out. Babylon. Sarah's pulse spiked. That's impossible. He coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. Not gone. She pressed harder on the gauze, but she could already feel the life draining out of him. His eyes rolled back, breath rattling. Within seconds, he was still. John cursed under his breath. We need to move, now. Move where? Anywhere. If someone's using that symbol, they know we're alive. She stared down at the patch, the red stitching glinting in the sun. The scorpion tail coiled upward, ending in a broken stinger. Not Scorpion's original insignia. A variation. A message. He's not coming for us, she said slowly. He's replacing us. John frowned. What do you mean? She stood, her voice low. Someone resurrected the program. CIA, private contractor, doesn't matter. They're rebuilding the Phantom unit. He ran a hand through his hair. We blew that bridge. There's nothing left. She looked out at the horizon, her eyes distant. You think Langley ever lets go of a weapon that works? They dragged the dead man to the edge of the dunes and buried him quickly. No names, no prayers, just sand and silence. Afterward, they sat in the shade of the clinic, both staring at the horizon. You think Webb's behind it? John asked. She shook her head. No, he signed our death certificates. He'd lose everything if someone proved we were alive. Then who? She didn't answer. Her mind was already racing, patterns, connections, fragments of old intel. John leaned forward. You're thinking about going after them. She didn't deny it. Sarah, he said carefully, we built this place to disappear, to stop fighting. You walk back into that world, you won't come out again. She met his gaze. If someone's wearing our ghosts, they'll use the same playbook, the same missions, same targets. That means people die. Not your problem anymore. She gave him a sad smile. It's always my problem. That night the camp was quiet. Children slept. Lanterns flickered. The ocean hissed like a living thing. Sarah sat alone outside the tent, cleaning her pistol, a habit she'd never quite shaken. The patch lay on the table beside her, staring back like a curse. John joined her, silent for a long while before he said, You remember what you told me. That healing is the only way to fight. She nodded slowly. Maybe this time you let someone else do the fighting. I've tried that, she said. The world doesn't wait. He sighed. Then I'm coming with you. She looked at him. You don't have to. He smiled faintly. I know, that's why I will. They didn't talk after that. Words were useless between people who'd already died once for each other. At dawn, she packed her kit, medical supplies, sidearms, small radio. She left the tent flap open, letting the sun spill in. The children she'd treated the day before were playing outside, laughter echoing across the beach. She stopped to watch them one last time. A girl waved, Dr. Sarah. Sarah smiled softly. Be good, Amina. Then she turned and walked away. John was already waiting by the jeep, a battered Land Cruiser loaded with water cans and fuel drums. He handed her a folded map. Nearest airstrip's 2 hours north. From there, we can hitch a UN transport to Djibouti. And then, he grinned, then we improvise just like old times. She nodded, climbing in. As the jeep rattled across the sand, the sea disappeared behind them, replaced by the endless stretch of desert. After a long silence, John said quietly, You sure you're ready for this? No, she admitted, but I'm not ready to hide either. He nodded, eyes on the horizon. Then let's go find whoever's stupid enough to steal our ghosts. Somewhere in Nairobi, thousands of miles away, a woman in a gray suit stood in front of a digital map glowing with red dots. Each dot marked a confirmed training asset under a new program, Phantom Rebuild. She smiled faintly as a new transmission came through. Unknown parties traced near Mogadishu coast, possibly former assets. She typed one word in reply. Observe. Then she turned to the window, watching the city lights flicker below like embers. Welcome back, Phantom, she whispered. Let's see if you can still bleed. Back on the road, dust rose behind Sarah and John's jeep like a memory trying to catch up. They didn't know yet that their faces were already flagged in a dozen black site databases. They didn't know that the program they once destroyed had been reborn in their absence. They only knew this. If someone was rewriting their story, they would be the ones to finish it. And as the first checkpoint appeared in the distance, Sarah reached for the scorpion patch, tucked it into her pocket, and whispered to herself. Medics don't fight unless they're forced to. How do you fight an enemy who learned everything from you? The jeep rattled down the cracked road, its engine groaning under the desert heat. Dust swirled around them in ghostly spirals, curling like memories that refused to die. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, eyes scanning the endless horizon, her hand resting on the worn leather of her medical bag. She wasn't sure if it was the engine or her heart that wouldn't stop humming. John drove in silence, cigarette dangling from his lips. His hands were steady, but his eyes were far away. Neither of them had spoken much since they'd left Somalia. They didn't need to. Between ghosts, words were redundant. 2 hours later, they reached the outskirts of Garo, a sprawling border town half swallowed by dust and desperation. Cargo trucks lined the roads. Men shouted in 3 languages. The smell of oil, sweat, and roasted corn clung to the air. John parked beside a weather-beaten cafe. We'll blend in here for a bit, he said. See what the local chatter says. Sarah scanned the street. Too many eyes. Too many guns, he countered. They stepped inside. The cafe was dim, filled with the low murmur of diesel traders and UN contractors pretending not to notice each other. The owner, a wiry man with kind eyes, nodded them toward a back table. John ordered 2 coffees in Arabic. Sarah sat facing the door, habit, scanning reflections in the window glass. Feels like Baghdad, she muttered. Smells worse, John replied. When the coffees arrived, she leaned forward. You said you had a contact here. He nodded. Former logistics handler, CIA front. If anyone's moving weapons or money through Phantom Rebuild, he'll know. They waited. Outside, the heat shimmered like a mirage. Inside, time seemed to hold its breath. Then a figure appeared at the door, a woman in her early 30s, wearing civilian clothes and mirrored sunglasses. She walked with military precision, scanning the room before approaching. Sarah's brow furrowed. "That's your contact." John shook his head slowly. "No, I've never seen her before." The woman stopped beside their table. "Phantom," she said quietly, "you're a hard ghost to find." Sarah's hand drifted to her pistol under the table. "You have 2 seconds to explain why you know that name." The woman removed her glasses. Her eyes were gray, sharp, familiar. "Because you trained me." The words hit like a sniper round. Sarah froze, searching her memory. "Who are you?" "Agent Maya Reyes. Red Sand, 2017. Counterintelligence trainee. You were my field mentor." Sarah's heart stuttered. The face was older, harder, but the name, yes. The quiet recruit who'd memorized every field manual, who'd asked too many moral questions. The one Sarah had vouched for before she disappeared. John leaned back, voice calm. "If that's true, what are you doing running a ghost program?" Maya didn't flinch. "I'm trying to stop it." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Stop it, you're part of it." Maya sat down, removing a flash drive from her pocket and setting it on the table. "Not by choice. Listen to me. Phantom Rebuild is CIA. It's private now. Langley sold off the original assets. It's run by a contractor called Sable Group, ex-intelligence, ex-military, and people who don't exist on paper." Sarah stared at her. "They used the name Phantom." "They used your legend," Maya said quietly. "Your file, your kill counts. They built an entire network of operatives trained to think like you, and they're not playing defense. They're building deniable strike teams. Africa, Eastern Europe, South Asia, anywhere governments want to pretend clean hands." John's jaw tightened. "How many?" "Dozens, maybe hundreds." Sarah leaned forward, voice sharp. "Who's leading them?" Maya hesitated. "Someone calling himself Spectre. He claims to be your successor." Sarah's stomach twisted. "He's not mine." Maya pushed the flash drive closer. "That has proof, op reports, training footage, encrypted mission data. But if you open it on any network, they'll know where you are." John glanced at Sarah. "So we don't open it here?" "No," Maya said. "You open it in Djibouti. There's a safe node there, UN humanitarian hub with isolated servers. You'll have maybe 5 minutes before they track the signal." Sarah's eyes softened slightly. "Why help us?" Maya's voice cracked. "Because I believed in what you taught me. You said we save people first and the mission second. They're doing the opposite now." Sarah studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You're still that kid from training, brave and naive." Maya smiled faintly. "And you're still the mentor who pretends she's not human." Before Sarah could answer, John's head snapped toward the window. "Incoming." 3 SUVs screeched to a stop outside. Blacked-out windows, armed men stepping out. Maya swore under her breath. "Sable." Sarah grabbed the flash drive. "Back door." The cafe owner pointed wordlessly to the kitchen. They sprinted through it, pushing past steam and shouts. The back alley was a dead end, only a metal staircase leading up to the rooftops. "Go," John barked. Gunfire erupted behind them. Glass shattered. Sarah vaulted up the stairs, John close behind. Bullets pinged off the railing, sparks flying. Maya covered their retreat, firing 2 clean bursts before following. They reached the roof, flat, open, endless sky above them. The air smelled of gunpowder and smoke. John looked for an exit. "Next building's 10 feet, jump or die." Sarah took a running start and leaped. Her boots hit gravel, knees bending with practiced precision. John landed beside her, then turned to cover Maya's jump. She made it halfway before a bullet grazed her thigh. She stumbled, grabbed the ledge and dangled. Hold on, Sarah shouted, dropping to her stomach and reaching out. Their fingers brushed once, then caught. Sarah gritted her teeth, hauling her up with strength she didn't know she still had. Maya collapsed beside her, panting. You always pick the worst vacation spots. Sarah almost smiled. You haven't changed either. They moved fast, darting across rooftops, cutting through back alleys until the gunfire faded behind them. When they finally stopped, they were miles from the cafe, hidden behind a cluster of abandoned shipping containers. John checked their perimeter. We've got a head start, but not for long. Sarah turned to Maya. You said Spectre's using my legend. Why? Maya winced, pressing her leg. Because he thinks you're still alive and he's trying to draw you out. Sarah's heart sank. How does he even know I exist? Maya hesitated, then pulled a photo from her jacket pocket. It was grainy, black and white, taken from a drone. It showed two figures outside a refugee tent. One man, one woman. Somalia. Sarah's throat went dry. They saw you, Maya said softly. Weeks ago. That's how they found me too. I tried to misdirect them, but they traced the transmission. John cursed under his breath. So much for disappearing. Sarah stared at the photo, then whispered, Spectre isn't trying to kill me. He's trying to become me. Maya nodded. Exactly. And to do that, he needs the original files, your psych evals, your mission logs, your kill authorizations. He's rebuilding your myth to control his people. Sarah's voice hardened. Then we destroy it. How? John asked. Maya looked at her. The data's stored in one place. Sable's Nairobi headquarters, encrypted under the old Phantom network. It's heavily guarded, but if we breach it, we can wipe the entire system. John frowned. That'll expose you. Maya gave a small, resigned shrug. I stopped being safe the day I reached out to you. Sarah stared out over the horizon, her mind racing. We hit it at night. You get us inside. I'll handle the wipe. John raised an eyebrow. You're sure you're ready to go back into that world? She met his gaze. I never left it. Maya watched them, something like awe flickering in her eyes. You two really are legends. Sarah shook her head. No, legends get told wrong. We're just what's left when the story ends. The sun dipped below the horizon, bleeding orange light across the desert. In the fading glow, Sarah opened her hand. The flash drive gleamed like a tiny, dangerous heart. Tomorrow, she said softly, we finish what they started. John looked at her, his expression unreadable. And after that? She gave a faint, tired smile. After that, maybe we finally stop running. But deep down, she knew the truth. Ghosts don't stop running, they just change the direction. What does redemption sound like? For Sarah, it was silence before the storm. The Nairobi skyline shimmered with rain and neon, towers like glass knives cutting into the clouds. From the rooftop of a half-finished building, Sarah crouched beside John and Maya, watching the Sable headquarters through the green tint of night vision optics. The building was a fortress. Steel perimeter, infrared grids, rotating guards, biometric locks. And inside, the digital heart of Phantom rebuild. Maya adjusted her earpiece, voice low. Security cycles every 8 minutes. We move between rotations. Basement level holds the servers, sub-basement has the data core. John loaded a magazine with quiet efficiency. How many guards? Too many, she said. He smirked, just enough then. Sarah didn't respond. She was staring through the scope at the faint glow of Sable's logo, a silver scorpion tail wrapped around a digital globe, her own shadow staring back. John noticed her silence. You okay? I don't know what okay means anymore. He gave her a small, lopsided grin. Means you're still breathing. She didn't smile. She was thinking of the refugees on the Somali coast, the children she'd stitched back together, the laughter that had made her forget what her hands were once used for. If this went wrong, all of that would vanish again. Maya checked her watch. We go in 60 seconds. The three of them shared a look, not fear, but understanding. The kind of silent promise forged only between people who'd already died once before. John broke the silence. Remember what you said in Babylon. Sarah frowned. Which part? He smiled faintly. You said sometimes dignity doesn't speak. She looked at him, eyes calm, resolute. Then let's act. They moved like shadows. Down the construction scaffolding, across the service alley, through a drainage tunnel that smelled of rust and rainwater. Maya hacked the maintenance door in seconds, old code, familiar protocol. The same system Sarah had written years ago under Langley's orders. It felt strange breaking into a lock she designed to keep the world out. The door hissed open. Inside, sterile light, marble floors, cameras sweeping in slow, hypnotic arcs. John whispered, "You'd think for a Black Ops shell company they'd keep a lower profile." Maya smirked. Power always wants to be seen even when it hides. They moved in silence through the hallways, avoiding patrols, timing every camera turn. Sarah's movements were precise, automatic. The phantom training never left her bones, it just went dormant. At the elevator, Maya swiped a stolen ID card. The light turned green. Sublevel 2. The descent was slow, the hum of machinery vibrating through the steel walls. Sarah's pulse stayed steady, but her mind wandered to Aleppo, to Babylon, to the faces of people who had trusted her with their lives and their deaths. The doors opened with a metallic chime. Rows of glass servers stretched before them, blinking in cold blue rhythm like an artificial heartbeat. John whistled under his breath. That's a lot of ghosts in one room. Maya moved to the central terminal. Give me 5 minutes. Sarah stood guard by the door, rifle ready. Every sound made her nerves hum. The building felt alive, aware. Maya typed furiously, lines of code flashing. They've layered it deep. Redundant encryption, multi-node backups, shadow servers offshore. Can you wipe it? Sarah asked. Yes, but I need root access. How do we get that? Maya looked up. Spectre. As if summoned by the word, the intercom crackled to life. Welcome back, Phantom. Sarah froze. The voice was calm, measured, disturbingly familiar. You made me wait long enough. Maya's fingers stopped on the keyboard. He knows we're here. Of course he does, John muttered. He built this place with your blueprints. The lights flickered, doors locked with a loud metallic clang. Sarah lifted her weapon. Where is he? Right above you, the voice said. They turned as a section of the ceiling slid open, a metal walkway descending slowly, and on it stood a man in tactical black. Tall, composed, bareheaded, and wearing her old Phantom insignia. Spectre. Sarah's stomach tightened. He looked young, too young. No lines on his face, no weight in his eyes, a perfect replica of who she once was before the guilt set in. Don't, she warned, aiming her rifle. He raised his hand slowly. I'm not here to kill you. Funny, John said, you brought an army. Spectre smiled. They're not for you, they're for them. He pointed toward the walls. Monitors lit up, revealing live feeds, soldiers training in black sites around the world, covert ops with her name stamped on them. Phantom missions. Sarah's chest constricted. You inspired them, Spectre said softly. You gave them something pure. You think I corrupted it, but you're wrong. I perfected it. You turned it into murder for hire. He shook his head. No, I turned it into purpose. Soldiers need gods, Sarah. You were one. I just made the religion. Her grip tightened on the trigger. You don't get to use my ghosts. But you created them, he said, stepping closer. You taught us that killing saves lives. You called it mercy. Her eyes filled with quiet fury, and I was wrong. He stopped inches away, searching her face. Then prove it. She frowned. What? He gestured toward the server core. Erase it all. Wipe every trace of Phantom. But you'll kill everyone linked to it. The agents in the field, the operatives who believe in you, people trying to be what you once were. Can you live with that?" The words hit like bullets. Behind her, Maya whispered, "He's bluffing." But Sarah's hands were trembling now. She knew the architecture. The network was connected, thousands of live IDs, every field operative tied to the central route. One total wipe and the signals would go dark forever. Spectre's voice softened. "You can't undo what you built, Sarah. You can only choose which lie to die for." For a long moment, the room was silent but for the hum of machines. Then John spoke, low but steady. "You told me once every life you save balances a life you took. Maybe this is how you end the count." Sarah turned toward him. His eyes were calm, resolute. She took a deep breath and walked to the terminal. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Sarah," Maya said softly, "if you do this, it's over, everything." She nodded. "That's the point." Spectre stepped closer. "You could join me, teach them, make it right." Her voice was a whisper. "You don't fix a lie by building a bigger one." She hit enter. The room exploded with light. Alarms blared. Screens went white. The entire data core began collapsing, burning from the inside, digital fire racing through the network, erasing names, files, coordinates. Spectre shouted, lunging forward, "No." John intercepted him, slamming him into the glass wall. The crack echoed like thunder. Maya pulled Sarah back. "We have to go." But Sarah didn't move. She watched as line after line of code vanished from the monitors, her legacy, burning clean. Spectre staggered, coughing, eyes wild. "You killed them, you killed your own." She met his gaze, calm. "No, I set them free." He reached for his weapon. John fired first. One clean shot, Spectre dropped. The silence afterward felt like absolution. Sarah exhaled, chest rising with something that felt like grief and peace at once. Maya grabbed her arm. "We're out of time." They ran. Sirens wailed. Fire suppression systems hissed as smoke filled the corridors. The building shook under the chain reaction of detonations triggered by the data purge. They reached the service exit just as the power grid collapsed behind them. Outside, the night air hit like baptism. Flames rose from the tower, mirrored in Sarah's eyes. A decade of secrets dissolving into the rain. John placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it." She shook her head slowly. "No, I just ended it." Dawn broke over Nairobi, gray and soft. The trio sat in an abandoned hangar near the outskirts of the city, waiting for transport. Maya's leg was bandaged. John was reloading out of habit. Sarah sat with her back against the wall, staring at her hands. Maya broke the silence. "They'll hunt us now. What's left of Sable won't stop." Sarah smiled faintly. "Let them. There's nothing left to chase." Maya nodded. "So what happens next?" Sarah looked toward the open door, where sunlight spilled onto the concrete. "We disappear again. Find a place where no one remembers the word phantom." John gave her a sideways grin. "You think such a place exists?" "Maybe," she said softly. "Maybe not, but it's worth looking for." They sat in silence, listening to the distant hum of the waking city. After a while, Maya said, "You could have joined him. Why didn't you?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "Because he wanted to lead ghosts, and I'm tired of being one." Hours later, as they drove south toward the border, a warm wind rose from the savannah. Sarah leaned her head against the window, eyes half closed. In the reflection, she saw her own face, older, lined, human. For the first time, she didn't see the killer. She saw the medic. And somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard laughter again, children on a beach, waves breaking, the world still turning. John looked over. "You thinking about home?" She smiled faintly. "This is home." He nodded. "Good answer." The road stretched on, endless and open, and for the first time in years, Sarah felt something unfamiliar moving in her chest. Not fear, not guilt. Hoping. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small scorpion patch. The red thread had faded, frayed around the edges. She turned it over in her hand once, then let it fly out the window. The wind carried it away. Somewhere in a dark office half a world away, Webb watched the Sable fire on a muted screen. His reflection glimmered over the image of collapsing servers. He smiled sadly, whispering to himself, "Sometimes ghosts earn their rest." In the golden light of morning, Sarah's voice echoed like a quiet confession over the sound of the road. "They said medics don't fight." A pause. Maybe that's true. Maybe we just heal what the rest of the world keeps breaking. The camera would fade then, to her silhouette against the rising sun. Wind in her hair, rifle in the backseat, eyes forward. And her final words would linger, soft and steady. Because sometimes healing is the fight.